Hello everybody, my name is Liam Walken, and today we will be turning this open concept bathroom into what you're seeing now. So let's take a look at how we did that. As with many of the projects we take on, this shower had the classic case of leaking through the curb, which inspired our clients to decide that it was time to renovate this thing. On top of that, this design just wasn't doing it for them, so we're going to be redoing pretty much everything, including these beautiful decorative columns. So that was both fun and satisfying, and with that, Sebastian, I think, decided he wanted to test out just how good my liability insurance is. Close call. As I've mentioned many times on this channel, when we're doing these demos, we do have the main water shut off to the house, so one of our biggest goals is trying to get that back on as soon as we can. Hence why I'm removing the drywall on the back side of the shower to get access to these water lines and cap them. Now, it was at this point I discovered a pretty big problem, as you'll see when I cut these water lines. With just a slight pull, I was able to actually take them out of their soldered fittings, which should not be the case. I remember thinking at the time as that happened, well, that was weird, and I didn't think too much more of it, but I did have this bad feeling in the back of my head, and it turns out that was for a good reason. As we were doing this renovation, just from the vibrations of us working and ripping the bathroom apart, several fittings below us had failed. They had pinhole leaks, started to leak into the ceiling below us. Now, that ceiling was already water damaged from both the shower and a couple other failures in the past with regards to this bathroom, but it was really sad to see these water lines fail in such a catastrophic way. So throughout the renovation, we did end up replacing all of the copper lines over for PEX. I wouldn't have felt comfortable leaving those in after all of the various problems, but it was really interesting to see this. Throughout all of our projects, I've never experienced anything like this before. I'm not sure if it was just poor quality of materials or just a bad solder job. I don't know. If anyone watching has some more info on this and why this might have been the case, please let me know. With that all said, we can carry on with the demo of this bathroom, and when it comes to tubs like this, our favorite kind of method of removal here is if we can get access to the water lines and plumbing through a wall, we will. So we went through the water closet for this one, cut all the lines, and then we can cut the silicone seal of the tub and just pry it out of place. And then once you have that out, you can kind of start dismantling from the inside, where you'll find it's quite a bit easier. Ripping off all the tiles with a pry bar, and then once you have a Sawzall out and you can cut things down the middle, it just becomes a whole lot easier to get them out. Get yourself a little bit of leverage, heave back and forth on things, and you'll be surprised at how easily these things can be dismantled. Now, this bathroom will be a full gut, including the walk-in closet here. While all of the fixtures are generally going to be staying in the same positions, they'll be changing enough that it warrants opening everything up, framing out new walls, running new mechanical items, the whole 9 yards with this one. Now, as we're removing all these walls, I'm sure many of you are wondering, how do you know if these are load-bearing or not? And as always, that is just a question I really can't answer for you guys. That's just something where I would hate to give someone a false idea of what they can or can't do. Generally speaking, is there a load on the wall? I know that's very obvious, but that is the question you're asking, right? And if you can solve that question, you got your answer. I always laugh at the early 2000s homes that would build these giant master en-suites and then give you the world's smallest shower. This is over 200 square feet of space in this bathroom, and they decided to give you about, I don't know, 10, 12 square feet of that for the shower. It's just amazing planning by these builders. And I'm not even saying that larger showers are always better. I'm just saying it's strange for them to give you such a casket feel to this thing. With the removal of the old mortar bed and PVC liner, we can really get an idea of just how bad the leak here was. You can see here the water in the subfloor here and all of the existing water damage. So we did end up replacing the subfloor, although we would have done so regardless for our curbless shower and repositioning of the plumbing. The closet footprint would be changing a bit too, hence why we had to remove the old hardwood flooring. There just wasn't going to be enough to replace the small section that we would need to for our new walk-in closet sizing. And then all the old tile floors coming out too. Typically we like the 3-foot pry bar for these floors, but this one was done a lot better than most of the floors we take out, so we found that the SDS was just better suited. Maybe it's about time I get a bigger one and start using that more so for these floor demos. It's something we'll have to see about. But with all the walls now open, we could start kind of addressing some of the flooring and opening up this subfloor, getting access to the plumbing. So we didn't open up everything all at once because initially we weren't having those issues with the old copper lines. So we just opened what we needed access to for relocations. Now again, eventually later on, we opened up a lot more to fully replace those copper lines. But right here, you'll see we're just opening things up to reposition all of the shower plumbing. This will also be a curbless shower, which means recessing the subfloor here. Although at this time I didn't do that. I just had sort of a, I don't know, some confusion on what the game plan was here, as we were doing a linear drain for the first time. So, you know, did a little bit of an oopsie, but that's all good. We did end up fixing that later on. Just, I don't know, maybe caused a couple hours worth of time sink that wasn't necessary, but these things happen. You know, you do these projects, and even if you do as many as we do, you're gonna make little mistakes here and there. Finally getting around to framing out some new toys for this space. So love this. Here we're just framing out the new walk-in closet. And here's just a floor plan for those of you that are curious to get an idea of kind of what we're working with here. Now, these might not all be exact to the T measurements, but they should be fairly close. So we are just going to frame out the two walls of this walk-in closet, one of which is going to house the niche for the shower. So you can see us leaving a big gap for that. And then where the door is, we did end up moving that over to the right. As you do these projects and renovations, it's one thing to have a drawing on paper, but then when you actually build it and get a feel for the space, you might change your mind on some things. And that's kind of what happened here. And that's totally okay. With every single job, you have to know that there will be changes that happen during the renovation process. It's totally normal. It's just the way things go and how it all works. We did frame out a half wall just to kind of separate the toilet space and tub space, and then also a nice bench for the shower. There was that existing linen closet within this bathroom that we couldn't manage to fit into the floor plan while also keeping all the features that our clients wanted. So instead we did wall it off, and if in the future they want to absorb that to the other side for more storage, they can totally do so. And then with that, we can start running all of our shower system here. So we got a nice, beautiful Kohler mixing valve, which was really cool by design. And with that, also doing a ceiling mounted rain head. So I'm gonna run some PEX A lines for that and ensuring that it stays below the vapor barrier and the insulation will go over top to keep it nice and cozy. With the PEX A style fittings here, you can see it's the expansion fittings, which is a really beautiful system. You know, if you're a DIYer, probably not going to be the system for you, as the tool itself is quite expensive. The crimp rings are totally fine, but for the quantity that we do here, it's definitely worth having. It really speeds things up. It's just a better system in my opinion, and it's just really satisfying too. A lot going on plumbing wise for this wall here, as there are going to be a handheld, a shower head, and a rain head for the shower, plus the mixing valve. And then on top of that, these PEX lines are going to be ran through this wall over to supply both sinks in the vanity as well. So hence why there is so much going on here. I'd say 80, 90%, if not more, of the jobs that we do are taking apart builder grade bathrooms. And that always leaves me with just so many questions. Like, why did they leave this bathroom open like this? As far as I know, that wasn't a trend at the time, although I suppose I'm not really old enough to know. But more so than that, why did they have a double framed wall for this? It's not load bearing in any way. It was simply a design choice, but it's just strange. So the wall we're putting in now, when we kind of took apart the old wall, is just going to be a single 2x4 framed wall, so that it just makes sense. Why would we have an 8-inch thick wall here if we don't need it? But anyway, so framing all that out, and you'll see on the left there, we do have just a nice niche that will be for the tub, for all the storage for the, you know, tub and whatnot. For the half wall here, we're going to use a combination of GRKs, framing nails, and construction adhesive to get this thing in. We like to try to overbuild our half walls, as, you know, they have the potential to have a lot of movement to them, especially before they get sheathed. So we are going into the joist below, as well as the framing in that back wall there. And with the first sheet of drywall going in, that marks the end of the rough-in stage. All of our framing is set, all of our mechanical items have been run, our plumbing, our HVAC, our electrical, all taken care of, and this is where things start to transform. As we do these renovations and work with a large variety of clients, it's really funny seeing almost the exact same reaction occur on every job. On the first day of demolition, the clients come in after the end of the day and they go, wow, you guys are really fast. And I just kind of smile and I go, yeah, it looks that way, huh? And then the next 2-3 days, nothing really changes visually that much. And you know that they kind of have that in their back of their mind, like, wow, what happened? These guys just went 100 to 0 real quick, huh? And then we start boarding things up, closing up the walls, and then again that same reaction of, wow, you guys are fast. And it's just kind of funny seeing that, because look, I mean, the thing is, the same amount of work gets done every day, and they know that, we know that, everyone knows that, right? But just visually, things don't change a whole lot during that roughen stage, right? And then you board things up and it's just a completely new space, so it's just really satisfying on our end. You'll see that we're putting green board even in the closet, and you might be thinking, is that necessary? And no, it's not. It's just kind of, I don't know, we got all the supplies, just kind of counted everything as green board, I guess, and that's what happened here. Is it overkill? Absolutely. Could I have saved myself 30-40 bucks on drywall? Sure, but it's all good. It's all good, guys. For the exterior wall here, cutting out shapes that would make even Tetris jealous. This was really quite an interesting wall to board up. And as we board up, you might sometimes notice some larger gaps and cracks, and we just found it's not really worth taking the time to get really precise boarding down. Instead, we'll just get the board up on the walls, and then anything that's kind of, you know, ugly can just be pre-filled, right? It's just a really quick and easy solution, and what we found to be a little more efficient, at least for us. I wish I could say that this was all planned to board us into this bathroom, but it wasn't. It was not, and I was just really glad to see that the ladders were in here with us instead of out there. If you're still watching the video at this point, if I could maybe just ask you to maybe just consider hitting that like button real quick. It only takes a second, and it really helps me out a whole lot. Also, it turns out most of the viewers here are not subscribed, so you just check to see, are you subscribed? You might not be. Hey, who knows? But if you don't want to do either of those things, it's totally okay too. I'm just glad that you're here at all. So thank you so much, guys. With all that drywall slapped up, Sebastian can start the mudding and taping process while I work on waterproofing the shower. So I'm going to start off with the 1/2-inch Curdy board. It's our go-to system. You've seen the videos on this channel before, you know that. Look, it's expensive, okay? But if you're a DIYer and you're considering what system to use, how you want to go about waterproofing your shower, and if you're deciding between membrane and Curdy board itself, not including other systems out there, just go with the board, okay? The membrane's so much more work. You'd be really surprised at just how much more work it is. Spend a little bit extra on the board. Telling you, getting membrane on all of your walls is just not a fun time. As far as working with this stuff goes, you can see, you can snap it, score and snap it with a knife or use a multi-tool on it. Multi-tool cuts through it like butter. But my primary goal is kind of go through stages. So I'm going to start by just getting it into place, just a couple screws here and there to hold it into the wall before going back and getting all of the washers in, and then subsequently all of the screws in. It's a really nice system in the manner that you can just kind of push these washers into place and they'll just bite into the foam and stay there. So you do what I do, board the walls, and then you go around with all the washers and then all the screws. And it is worth it, in my opinion, to take the time, just go with the level and a Sharpie and just mark your studs, you know, because it only takes a sec, and then you can kind of ensure you actually land on your studs and you're not missing. And then where it meets the drywall here, I did size this board and the framing itself so that this would kind of end right where our glasswork is going to go, so that the full shower is waterproofed. And again, as I'd mentioned, we put all of those washers in place, and then I'm going to go back with screws and sink it into the board. As mentioned earlier in the video, this is my little oopsie here. We should have recessed this already. Not a big deal though, right? I mean, it is screwed and glued down, so the glue a little bit annoying, but the screws come out easily enough. Pry out the piece of plywood, clean up the joists a little bit, and then move on to the recessing process. Again, link the videos to this if you want to learn more on it, but essentially just taking 2x4s, putting them down the width or the thickness of our subfloor, using a combination of construction adhesive and framing nails to get them into place, and then cutting plywood to size and inserting it so the top of the plywood is flush with the top of the joist. The process really doesn't take too long at all. I mean, I think here this might have taken an hour, if even, so it's really not too bad once you kind of perfect the method for it. It's a nice process. And then marking out the drain location, and this is just a 5-inch hole saw to get that cut out. This is a 55-inch Schluter linear drain pan, which means we're using the 51-inch tileable drain grate with it. So it comes with that sort of foam backer, so I can hold that up to my pan, cut it out as is the size indicated on it, and then do a little dry fit here. See, I got my pan and drain foam into place, dry fitting everything, making sure it's all going to line up. And then priming all of the floors with Schluter's Primer U, as we're putting an underlayment down on this floor so that we can tile on that underlayment. The one we'll be using here is Ditra Heat Peel and Stick. So that's right, it's got a self-adhesive to it. And to make sure that that has a nice tight bond, we do just want to prime these old dirty subfloors. So we clean them up, prime them, let that set up overnight, and then came back the next day. And as you can see here, this stuff is really nice to work with. Cuts with a knife, peel off the backing, and it's like a sticker, right? You just put it down on the floor. We've got a wheel to kind of roll it out, get some weight because it is pressure activated adhesive. And with that, that's kind of how easy it is to put this stuff down. Now, it's a lot more expensive than the non-peel and stick version. However, with the time we save and the effort and the mess-free aspects of it, it's well worth it to me personally. If you're working on a tight budget, or I don't know, maybe it's just not available to you, totally understandable. You don't need this, but for us, it's just a good product. For all of the corners and seams, I will be using Curdy band in these long strips to just cover all of that up. I'm using the Curdy trowel as well with Schluter's All Set, using directional troweling. I'm gonna put my banding over all of those seams and then take a couple of dull drywall knives, collapse those ridges of thin sets, get all of the air out, and ensure it's got a nice tight bond to it with full coverage. Any of the screw washer holes, I'm gonna cut squares of Curdy membrane. I just find it's a lot easier and a lot less material waste to do the squares. Look, it's not as pretty, right? It's not what the guys on Instagram are doing, but it works all the same for the practical application. And then moving on to any inside outside corners, I should have just gotten a roll of membrane for this bench with all the different perforations, but worked out all as well with the banding, just a little bit more work. For the drain install, I'm going to be taking a 1/4 inch by 3/8 inch square notch trowel, getting that foam backer piece into position, getting a whole bunch of thin set on that, and then gluing up the inside of that P-trap as well as kind of the stub out on the back of my linear drain here. So you'll see that Fernco fitting inside of that is just more ABS so that the ABS fits into the P-trap. So at the same time as you're gluing that drain, you're also getting it into that thin set, doing it all at once. Kind of look through the hole if you gotta, make sure that everything fit where it had to, and then I can go back for the pan. I did just slightly dampen the subfloor there before getting my thin set in for that pan, and then directionally troweling with the same square notch trowel, collapsing those ridges by just kind of doing a shuffle on the van, and then I can start waterproofing everything here. So you see back to that Curdy trowel now, getting all the thin set in, folding out all of the membrane that came with the linear drain insert here, and then with that I can do all of the remaining corners where the pan meets the wall, and even a couple feet outside of the shower as well, kind of tying into the Ditra Heat. For mixing up our thin set, we're just going to measure out water with a little pail here to the best of our ability, although really we're going to be going by consistency of thin set. We do have the whale tail attachment on the vacuum to control dust a little bit, although respirators are still recommended. And then we're looking for just a nice thick, I don't know, peanut butter-ish consistency for tiling. And this is Schluter's All Set once again. The tile for this project is 24 inch by 48 inch porcelain, nice big tile, and I'll be cutting it with the Ruby Python wet saw. I do also have a DeWalt wet saw, which we use for 24 inch and under tile, and I definitely prefer that over this thing. This thing's just so big. You don't need something like this to work with tile, right? You can always just use a grinder or various different snap and scoring methods, but this is what we used for this project. And then for installing it here for the shower pan, dry fit everything first, then came back, mixed our thin set, 1/2 inch square notch trowel, directional troweling, getting those tiles into place, kind of making sure everything lines up well and good. And you should not stand or kneel on tiles you've just set. However, all this was done in like a 5-minute period, so I wasn't worried about disturbing the bond and the curing process of that thin set just yet. We just want to make sure that we got good kind of slope everywhere. Both tiles there that are inside of the glass enclosure should be sloped towards that drain, and make sure of that, and then we can kind of lock everything together and transition to the other tile here, and that transition will be made using the glass to kind of separate the two. You'll also notice I got kind of a weird looking DeWalt tool on that tile there. That is the new DeWalt Grabo. So it's just like kind of a battery powered vacuum lifter, which is really handy if you're using tile this big. And as far as the install goes, you're gonna kind of fill in the voids of that Ditra and then come back, trowel it out, back butter all the tiles, embed it into place, and use those wedges to make sure we have no lippage anywhere. At the time of our Ditra install, I wasn't sure where the which way the door was gonna be swinging, so ended the Ditra off on the wrong side. Should have came in a little bit more, but no worries. We only have like 3 inches of tile overhanging it, so did just fill that with extra thin set. And don't worry, that void that you kind of see, I did go back with just a drywall knife and kind of push thin set so we'd have full coverage under there. Because obviously, if you left a void, if you were to ever stand there, you could snap the tile. So you want full coverage here and really everywhere. It's always something you should be aiming for. I also just want to make a note here. So the tile we're using was a very cheap tile. This was the worst quality tile I've ever worked with, to be honest. And I just want to note, if you are thinking about doing one of these projects for yourself, maybe you haven't worked with tile before, there is a very big difference on quality of tiles, right? So this tile is made in India. It was, you know, $3 a square foot Canadian. Maybe a big difference between like a tile that's, you know, $8 a square foot made in Italy. So just take a note on that. For the niche, clients went with this nice little accent tile for the back of it. So I did just take 2 larger Schluter niches, cut them down the middle to get a nice 48-inch niche, adhered them to be 1, and then I could install this mosaic into the back of it. And that's just gonna make for an easier time when it comes to tiling this niche. For tiling the walls of this shower, I started off with this bench, and I think that was a mistake just because I had imagined starting off with this back wall and then doing the side walls. But because there is a very obvious bench here, that meant that after I had done the bench, I couldn't start that next tile as I didn't have an established grout line. Sure, I could have measured it, but that leads to some small variances in change. And it's really important to have the grout lines in the shower all line up exactly. So I did this bench with the miters, kind of close that up, try to get them nice and tight, although it was limited by the quality of this tile. And then with this bench kind of set in place, I moved on to this sidewall here. For starting off that first row, you'll notice I take this tile and flip it upside down. I can then take a pencil and put a mark on that laser line, right? So I'm going to mark it on the laser line. I'm going to flip the tile over, transferring those pencil lines to now the front of the tile. And then when I go to cut this tile, I'm going to run my wet saw blade right through the first pencil line and ideally end in the middle of that second pencil line. What that is going to do is allow me to then take the cut tile, put it back in the shower, and this way my cut edge will be facing the floor. That way I don't have to worry about any microchips or anything like that that the wet saw created. Of course, you could polish them, but we need a silicone joint at the corner anyways. So instead, by having that cut edge face the floor, it leaves me with a factory edge that will be exposed on the top, and then we can get our nice silicone bead there later on. I am using, of course, the laser line to establish the exact height for this first row, and I'll make use of those little red wedges, the hard plastic wedges, to make sure everything is exactly and perfect where it needs to be. In regards to tiling walls, typically when I'm working with 24-inch tile and up, oftentimes I will actually back butter the walls and then trowel out thin set on the back of the tile, although there's no real set stone method here. As you can see, I just set 2 tiles, one in which I troweled out the wall, one in which I back buttered the wall. So it's just kind of how I'm feeling with each tile. Sometimes I think it's cleaner and easier to just trowel out the tile. Sometimes it's easier, cleaner to trowel out the wall. And you'll see that occurring a lot in the video. So just in case there's any confusion there, what's happening, that's the best I can explain it. With the transition to cap off this tile, we will be using the Deco S-Tree profile, which is just a channel for the glass to sit in. I'm going to kind of backfill those tiles with fresh thin set, so we just leave a slight void as we were tiling for this purpose. Get the fresh thin set in there, and then I can slide the profile in and it will have fresh thin set to form a nice tight bond with. You also see that we do have to shim this profile out so that it's flush with the thickness of the tile. And that's just because this is an existing wall with wonky framing. You'll see on the other wall much tighter to that wall because we framed that out, right? So it's actually flat, whereas this one, it's got a couple little curves to it. Nothing major, right? If anything was truly bad, you would want to fix that, but enough just to have to shim out that profile. To cut out our niche here, you'll see that we got that laser to establish the top of our niche where we want that grout line to be. because it's going to just continue through the shower. We cut out the niche by just holding it up into position, marking it with a Sharpie, and then taking a multi-tool to it. We put in some additional framing because we do make the height of our rough-in framing for the niche much larger than it has to be. So we can take those 2x4s, put them in, insert our niche, poke our low voltage wire through for the LEDs, and then waterproof the entire perimeter of it. Just the same as that other wall, I'm gonna take that laser, establish our first grout line, get our height for our tile, make sure everything's level, using that Grabo DeWalt tool to kind of help out with positioning everything, getting a nice good amount of thin set, getting full coverage everywhere, using the wedge style systems, 1/16 grout lines, and then working our way up. We got a couple L cuts for this niche, and here's where you can really see why it's worth taking the time to get your niche at the right height. So here, we get a full tile up, and then we just have a nice factory edge there. The grout line runs right through the top. It's a really clean look, and for supporting those tiles, just took a couple clamps, reverse them, and then they can hold those tiles as that thin set cures. Moving on to the back wall here, very straightforward wall with this one. Just gonna work our way up, measure out our tiles so that we got a nice, I like to keep maybe 1/16, 1/8 of an inch, maybe in some cases in that corner, and that's what we'll eventually fill with silicone for that expansion joint. For tiling the niche, gonna take some large amounts of thin set. I don't like to trowel, I just like to take big globs and push the tile down, squeeze all that excess thin set out, and that way I can manipulate the exact position and slope of these tiles, because we want that bottom tile especially to slope towards the drain. And this way we can also get these profiles in with those nice miters and make sure everything just lines up really nicely. This is a little bit messy doing it this way because there is so much thin set, but you can clean that up with a sponge, toothbrush, and then making use of these red wedges to make those miters nice and tight with each other. Last bit of tile to install is for the tileable drain grate for this linear drain. So I'm just going to take the same tile that was cut out from that existing piece there so that the pattern has continuity. And I'm going to take thin set, embed it into here, making sure I got kind of a 1/16 grout line all around it for the water to get into. If you want to learn how to miter and epoxy fill your outside corners of tile, I do have a video, I'll link to that, but it's going to take some painter's tape, kind of mark that reveal, clean it out with some rubbing alcohol, mix up my epoxy color match to the tile, fill it in, remove the tape, knife it off a couple hours later, and then the next day sand it to smooth it over. While I was working all that, Sebastian was mudding the whole bathroom, getting that all taken care of, and now he's just priming it. Sherwin-Williams Cover Max, great primer. Nice, it's nice to get everything looking white instead of green. We did recently make the switch to epoxy grout instead of cement based, just for so many different reasons. So this is Laticrete Spectralock Pro in the color Frosty. And here's the deal with epoxy grout, okay? It is about, I don't know, maybe 4 times harder to install and work with. And it's also quite a bit more expensive, but man, it's just so worth it. I mean, grout is one of those things that in showers and bathrooms always gets so gross and needs maintenance. So by switching to epoxy, we get rid of all those issues. Look, it's harder to work with, but it's just so worth it. And now addressing the change in planes with silicone. And there's a couple little residues of thin set left in there that I could have done a better job of cleaning out. But this is Latisil, again, color match to the grout, so that frosty color. And I'm gonna just take a nice good bead of it in all of the corners. I then go back, spray it with some soapy water, and then I can tool it out with a popsicle stick to get a nice shape to it, clean it up, make it look good. And then I'll give it one more pass with my finger to really just smooth it over and get it looking clean. Guys, I need you all to listen very carefully. If you are located within Mississauga or surrounding areas and you want to do a bathroom and use a color, please hit me up. This is no longer a joke. I'm going to need therapy if I have to see one more shade of gray. If you want to do a bathroom and use a color, I will give you a very good discount. Help me. Anyways, putting in the pot lights now. So these are just 4-inch LED. I think we had them set to 4000K. I get them from Irani now, which is made here in Canada. Really good quality pot lights, much better than the Chinese ones that we've been using for a while. And just gonna kind of lay them out to get a nice color balance in this bathroom. Blue, green, yellow, pink. Okay, I'm obviously having a bit of a laugh of it. As far as these bathrooms go, with what we do, all these white and gray color palettes, I do actually like these bathrooms. Like, I look at them and they're very nice, especially in person. They feel great. It's just that with what we do, bathroom after bathroom always being white and gray, you just gotta know from like our perspective, it would be nice to try something new, right? And just on that note, if you're thinking about renovating your own bathroom, your own home, and you're thinking about doing white and gray because of resale, you want to appeal to the largest amount of people without kind of scaring anyone off, I do just want to take a sec and maybe ask the question, who are you renovating for? Is this a house that you're gonna be selling in the next couple of years? Or are you gonna be living here for a decade, 2 decades, longer? I think when it comes to home renovations, so often we get bogged down with the idea of return on investment, when I think really we should be looking at it from a perspective of, this is your home, build it the way you want it. And if that's white and gray, all the power to you. I think that's fine. I think it's nice. But I'm just saying, maybe think about doing something for yourself. If that sole reason for doing that very, you know, fail-safe palette is for other people, just treat yourself. These shower fixtures here are all Kohler, very high quality fixtures, and I love working with high quality products. This was just fun to put all this stuff in. You know, we got the rain head, the shower head there, and then the handheld going in here, which will have an associated kind of adjustable bar and hose. And then the mixing valve here was unlike any I'd installed before. It had that cool kind of foam piece around it, cut to be flush with the tile. Taking out the multi-tool on a shower valve, this wasn't something I thought I'd ever encounter, and really customizing this thing. This is a cool valve, pricey for sure, but I really enjoyed installing this thing and it looks beautiful. To close off this project, getting the tub filler and tub in. Cue comments crying about cleaning behind the tub. But with this tub here, this is a spa tub, which was really cool to install. Just run a dedicated line to it and then kind of use the island tub drain to get it hooked into that P-trap below. A couple little globs of silicone around it to hold it into place while still allowing an air gap for the majority of it for that motor. And there we have it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you are located within the Mississauga or surrounding areas and are in need of a bathroom renovation, my website will be in the description below. And what I mentioned earlier, if you're thinking about doing a bathroom with color in it, I will straight up give you a better price. That was a genuine offer. Also, if you're still around, maybe just hit that like button on your way out, subscribe, or if not, no matter, I just appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. As always, here are the prices and timeline, so do with that information what you will, just knowing that those are my prices only, so don't expect those anywhere else. Might be more expensive, might be cheaper, those are mine. Anyways, seriously, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this, and I hope you have a beautiful day.